welcome everybody to the IdiotSpeak podcast number 5. Woohoo! James, what are we going to talk about today?
Today we're going to talk about the new FallOut trailer that just came out for FallOut number 4, and what we think is going to be in the game or not be in the game, or
could be in the game.
Could be in the game.
Yeah, I was impressed with the trailer. It was what I was expecting it to be. It was yesterday, I believe, they announced that the countdown was coming, which I want to say with that countdown, I believe that was Bethesda just poking fun. Did you hear a few years ago there was a countdown that looked like that? It looked like a Bethesda countdown. It was the same shot like of the TV please wait screen, and there was a countdown with it, and then it turned out that the whole thing was fake. It was just some fan made it.
No.
And everyone was freaking out, like, oh, Fallout 4 is coming, we're finally going to hear something. And then, I think it counted down, and it was just like, oh, ha, I fooled you. Yeah. And I think this was Bethesda, trolling people again, like, hey, we saw that too, that was pretty good, here's our version of it. But, and then the trailer was announced today, or premiered today, and it was exactly what I figured it was going to be. It looked like a very nice-looking Fallout 3.
Yeah. Yeah, I really liked how it transitioned back and forth from the time that you're going to play in versus before the war, and how you could kind of see everything. And I'm wondering how much of that is actually going to be in the gameplay, if we're going to get backstory of what actually happened in this location, and maybe where your family line came from. Because how long are people supposed to be in the vaults? I don't even remember.
Yeah, I don't know. I think people are supposed to always be in the vault, like that.
Well, and that was the whole premise of having multiple Fallouts, is it's all different vaults opening at different times, or people escaping from the vaults.
Right. And I think, if I remember right, it was Vault 111 on this guy at the very end.
Yeah, because it's all ones.
Right. What was it on 3? Was it 108 or something like that?
One of them was 113, I thought. I mean, see, the problem is that in playing the game, you run into other vaults.
That's true.
I can't ever remember.
Yeah, I don't remember what the original one you was. I wonder if there is any kind of relation. Well, there probably wouldn't be, because
locations.
The location. This one, from everything I've heard, is in Boston, and then Fallout 3 was DC.
Yeah. But
I don't know. There could be some kind of, maybe your father from 3 has multiple families around. Who knows? Who knows what time this game takes place versus when 3 took place.
Yeah, it could be that this is maybe the first vault that opened or something, and so we're going to learn more about what happened and stuff. But it looks like things are pretty set up. I mean, in the picture it showed a city, and it showed they had shops and stuff in the city, well, in the village, or whatever you want to call it, the tent city.
Right.
And yeah, so I'm kind of curious to see what they do with it, and how much backstory we do or don't get. What I thought was interesting is it didn't show anybody in the vault, because in 3 you start in the vault as a kid, and then you grow up to whatever age you're supposed to be. I don't even remember.
I believe it was 18 or something like that.
Yeah, and then you get out of the vault.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess that means people were in at least that vault 18 years.
Yeah.
Maybe this one is somebody went into the vault as soon as everything happened. This is someone trying to come out of the vault, but again, I don't know how cities and stuff are built unless it's just people that randomly survived. Mutants.
I mean, I'm assuming, at least from what I know of Fallout 3, that there were people who never were in a vault. They just somehow survived, or maybe they have migrated from... Because, in New Vegas, we see that not the entire country was hit as hard as DC was.
Right.
Which would make sense, because DC would be a major target during a war.
You'd think Boston would be too, though. It's a fairly large city.
It is, but I mean, it's not...
It's not New York, it's not D.C., it's not L.A.
I mean, it's not military, and it's not government as much as, obviously, D.C. or whatnot, but... I mean, Vegas was hit, it just wasn't... I mean, Vegas, to me, New Vegas was almost more run down than...
doesn't look like a bomb fell on.
Right, exactly. So... I'm curious of how damaged Boston's going to be, and I mean I know we've seen the ghouls and stuff in the trailer, so there are going to be the irradiated
the mutants and whatever else.
There has to be. I mean, that's kind of what Fallout's known for. I am curious, like you said, though, are we going to get gameplay of before the war, or was that just for the trailer, or are we going to see anything like that?
Because it'd be cool if it was somebody that was alive before the stuff happened that you're playing as, and then you're playing as a person that gets out in the same lifespan or something, that you could have flashbacks or something. You know, you walk into a place and you've got your old memories about it or something, or
that would be cool.
Something. Maybe it's somebody that you're the only survivor out of that vault. Like, for some reason, something happens to the vault, and you're the only person that survived, but you have amnesia or something. Games like to do that.
They like to do that. That's kind of a pretty common trope that they use.
Yeah, and so he's got to slowly figure out who he was and what happened and all that fun stuff.
So, another thing that I found very interesting with the trailer was that at the very end, the guy speaks, the protagonist speaks.
Yeah, I thought that was weird too.
Because I don't believe in Fallout 3 your character ever speaks, and I'm not I didn't play too much of New Vegas. I don't know if...
I don't think he says anything. Like, you interact with people. Like, you choose different things that
right,
you're supposed to say.
You have your dialogue, but it's never actually spoken.
See, that would be cool. Like, if you choose something and he actually says it.
Can you imagine? Well, and here's the thing.
Would that be convoluted then? Because you're picking something,
and then
like
he's saying,
unless it's just like agree, disagree, and then harshly agree.
Right,
agree.
Different levels of that, and then your character says something based on
what you choose.
And I mean, can you imagine how much dialogue that voice actor would have to do?
It'd be a ton,
and especially because I believe, I mean, if they're sticking with the formula, you can pick if you're male or female, so they'd have to have two,
a male and a female. Yeah.
So I mean,
but that would put a lot into the game. Like, that'd be neat, just because the whole thing is with Fallout is the amount of choices that you have about how open it is, and how you can go wherever you want. There is a story, but you don't have to follow it, and all this other stuff. So that would be another element to that of like, well, what would have happened if I gave the harsh answer? I don't know what I would have said. Like, the character would have said.
Right.
Now I got to go back and find out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have a million save states, and my hard drive's gonna blow up.
That would add a lot of replayability.
Yeah.
Now, something I'm kind of curious. I know the voice actor who played, I believe it was Three Dog from Fallout 3?
Yeah, whoever the villain was.
No, not the villain. The radio, the DJ.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying it was Three Dog. I think it was Three Dog.
I don't remember.
I know he tweeted a while back saying that he was getting his Three Dog voice ready again. So do you think, if that's true, if he's actually going to be in the game again, unless he's just a recording, that would mean it would be either the same time or very similar, close time to when Fallout 3 took place.
Well, how much do you find out about Three Dog? I mean,
I know you go and visit him that one time, and you hear him on the radio. He's talking. I'm just saying that would set kind of the time zone of when this game takes place.
Yeah, I guess so.
It would have to be within his lifetime.
Yeah. Which means that, you've probably been in the vault at least a similar amount of time, unless Three Dog is just old. Or
like it could just be recordings that someone who's now running the radio has found and
is replaying.
They're playing. I mean, there would be new recordings. Like the voice actor would have new recordings. They wouldn't just be reused, but they could pawn it off that way. Like, oh, he's not alive,
right?
But we found these ancient recordings.
Or he could have, who knows, transposed his consciousness into a robot.
Oh, yeah.
Who the hell knows?
Like Malcolm McDowell.
Yeah.
I hope he's back somehow. I remember that was the coolest thing when I first played Fallout 3, and I get outside, and there's that robot roaming that first, like, abandoned town you get to.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, is that Malcolm McDowell? Yes, it is!
Yeah, so I guess you could do something like that, but I'm very curious about the time frame as to where this fits in, especially if they're going to have backstory or pre-apocalypse story at all.
Now, did you finished Fallout 3, right?
Yes, I never finished Vegas, but I finished 3.
So I never finished 3. I got very close, and then I got distracted with something, and then I never actually ended up going back and playing it or finishing it.
That's what happened to me with New Vegas.
Yeah.
Same exact thing happened. I was like, ugh.
I played just a bit of New Vegas, and I didn't get into it as much as I did with Fallout 3. It just, to me, New Vegas seemed like DLC.
Yeah.
And I wish that's kind of what... Because there was a lot of DLC for Fallout 3.
Yeah, there was.
And I was kind of... After playing New Vegas, it kind of felt like, well, maybe this should have been just DLC as well.
Yeah.
But... So I'm not too familiar with the story with New Vegas. I don't think it has anything really to do with anything that happened in 3. I think it's its own separate story. But I'm just curious if there is going to be any like relation with Fallout 4 and those those two games, if there's going to be like some like wink nudge nudge to story plot lines, like maybe certain characters other than Three Dog might appear.
I'm sure there is, because they like to do that in 3 in Vegas, where they're kind of hinted. Well, at least they like to do eggs from other things.
Oh yeah.
So I would bet they're going to put in Easter eggs from the previous games and stuff like that. And they really liked the cap system, or at least I like the cap system, the bottle cap system.
Yeah, no,
and different stuff like that. You go to the Nuka-Cola plant and do all that kind of stuff. So I hope that they have stuff like that in there, because that's what makes those kind of games cool. Is if you've played them before, there's stuff that you're going to understand that maybe somebody coming in doesn't.
I mean, to me, that was just kind of like Fallout's charm, is that it would take these, like I said, the bottle cap system, where you'd find bottle caps and that's currency. I mean, who would have ever thought of that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the charm of the Fallout games. Something else I noticed with this trailer that they posted was it was a lot more vibrant in color. It like Fallout 3, and from the bit I've played of Vegas, it was very like washed out. It was very drab. It was, the apocalyptic looking.
Vegas got better once you got into the town with the neon and stuff like that, which really kind of brought it up. But I definitely agree with you, especially with the flashback scenes, if that's what you want to call it. Those were extremely bright. But it also seems like in 3, it almost like it was overcast all the time, and stuff like that.
I mean, there was points of sunniness, but it just never really made it bright. It was a very just brown, gray, old, washed out green looking everything. Everything was a very similar color.
Well, and everything was kind of toned down to that. The clothing, the everything. Whereas even in this trailer, I mean, like, that was one of the things that I noticed in the new Vault. I don't know what you want to call him.
I was about to call him a Vault Hunter too.
Yeah, I was going to say he's not a Vault Hunter. That's from Borderlands. But the guy from the Vault,
Vault Boy.
His blue that he's wearing is extremely blue.
Right. And I mean, even the buildings, like they're like the tents and stuff.
Yeah.
And the like the awnings on the buildings, like
red and stuff.
I mean, they were very vibrant and very colorful, which to me is kind of it's going against what we see with post-apocalyptic anything, and kind of I get a very Mad Max vibe out of Fallout and even the Borderlands. I mean, you can tell that those games were inspired by those movies.
Yeah.
And the new Mad Max did this exact same thing. Everything was vibrant in that movie. And George Miller said he wanted to do that to make it stand out from other apocalyptic movies, because every apocalyptic movie you see or game or whatever, it's just like we were saying, it's drab, it's all the same colors.
Yeah.
And with his,
it's not visually stunning.
It's not, because I mean it works because it doesn't need to be. It because everything's dead, so everything needs to look dead or just unappealing. Right. And he went the exact opposite with the new Mad Max, and that's kind of, to me, what it looks like they are doing with Fallout 4.
Yeah.
Is they're like, hey, everything that is in this style looks this way, so we're doing the exact opposite, and it'll make it ours stand out.
Well, and then that kind of makes me wonder, maybe it's set at an even further time in the future. Maybe it's when stuff's starting to bounce back.
See, that's kind of what I was hoping. I was hoping we were going to get a game that's so far in the future that they are on the verge of rebuilding. Like, everything it went as far bad as it could, and now they're on the upswing again. After a very long time, they're on the upswing. Now they've got to deal with these new forms of life, the mutants and the mutated wildlife and all this. And it's like they're rebuilding society with that in mind. They're dealing with that, and I think that could prove to be very interesting, that seeing a game on the gameplay in that kind of time zone where things are actually starting to improve.
Yeah.
And maybe there's like a group that are against that. Like, we want this to stay every man for themselves, no government, and this and that. Like,
right.
You've got like
there's anarchists.
Right. And which the bandits from Fallout 3.
Yeah.
And they're trying to prevent progress. So you've got like these two factions. You've got the one group they're trying to rebuild, but they're going to set up some kind of a class system where the people who have importance are going to be higher up on
right.
the
If
food.
you've got skills, you're going to be a little bit more valuable.
Right. So, and you've got, like, basically it'd be like this oncoming war between the two, and you're caught in the center, and that would be, like, maybe where your moral choices come into play.
Yeah.
Like, do you do, like, missions for the bandits to keep everything fair and even, or do you start working for the rebuilders to help rebuild society?
The way it was, yeah. Yeah, and you could go off on a bunch of different factions and different stuff like that. So my question to you is, just based on what you've seen so far, neither one of us have what you would consider a next generation console. We don't have a PS4 or an Xbox One. We've got the Wii U, but not any of the higher powered
No one makes games for the Wii U other than Nintendo.
I know.
So,
but, you know, we're old school like that. We like the Nintendo games. But, so do you feel like maybe this is the game that pushes you into having to get one of those consoles?
I have always said that what I was going to do was wait to see where Valve goes.
Yeah.
Because I know Valve has talked on both sides. At first, like with the last gen, they really were behind Xbox. They really didn't like PlayStation. And then towards the end of middle towards the end of that console's life cycle, they kind of switched. Like, we're sick of Microsoft's policies. We're more PlayStation now. So I've said from the beginning, I'm waiting to see where Valve goes, and that's where my money was going to rest on. If somehow Valve makes Portal 3, Half-Life 3, or Left 4 Dead 3 an exclusive for either one of those, that's where I'm going, because that's really what got me to buy an Xbox 360, were Valve games. I bought my Xbox to play Left 4 Dead and Portal. And so that's kind of why I've been waiting, because I want to see what Valve goes to. I know there's always the off chance that Valve will just say, hey, we'll make our own machine, the Steam machine or whatever.
Right.
And they've kind of threatened doing that, and I don't think they would be willing to make their games exclusive just to that, because there's not... right now, there's no install base for that.
Yeah.
I mean, and what they've talked about with it is just more like a high-powered
computer,
PC.
Basically, yeah. It's a small gaming PC that would run your Steam account, basically.
Exactly. I mean, and if I really wanted that, I might as well just build a PC and then do that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. After seeing this trailer, I really want to play Fallout again, so I might pick up an official next-gen console to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm leaning, is if come E3, because that's going to be a big determining thing too. You know, what kind of exclusives are we going to see from Xbox or PlayStation, if any? And my thing is that I've always kind of followed Final Fantasy. The only reason that I got a PlayStation 2 was so I could play the Final Fantasy games, because they weren't on anything else. Well, the only reason I got Xbox 360 was I didn't want to get a PlayStation 3, and luckily they put Final Fantasy 13 on Xbox. So that's why I ended up going with Xbox 360. So that kind of sways me in one way or the other, but I think with the way that Final Fantasies are going, they're probably going to be on both.
I would imagine so.
Just because of the following that they have and everything. But I'm kind of curious to see, when is their next generation? I mean, they just came out with the one in the PlayStation 4.
Right.
Nintendo getting ready to make an announcement in the next year or so of their
I think
new NX.
I think Nintendo has to, because the Wii U has been so left behind.
Right.
Because I remember at first everyone was saying it was the install base. Like, no one had a Wii U, so we're not making games for it. After doing some reading, I think it's more or less the architecture behind the Wii U, because it's very old. It's what PowerPC, where the Xbox One and the PS4 are more like current PC, and it's easier to build for those two. So if you could make a game and easily port it to one or the other, because they're more or less just PCs in a box,
right?
That there's no real work to port the two. Then all of a sudden you have this other console that's like,
there's a lot more work that has to go into it,
and we're probably not going to sell as many copies on it.
Yeah.
Why bother? Yeah. So I think Nintendo is making this next console, which I almost want to say, when this NX comes out, it's what are we right now? We're on the 8th generation of games of consoles
for Nintendo.
Well, no, for like in general, like if we're going to say Wii U, Xbox One, and PS4 are the 8th generation.
Okay.
I think that's the number we're on. I almost want to say the NX is like 8.5.
Yeah, it's 8.5.
Because it's not really a next generation from what... I mean, I know we know nothing about it, but it feels like the time span of it, it's not next. It's...
Gotcha.
We're catching up so we can actually compete again.
Yeah. So, I mean, to go back to, is this going to push us into buying the newer generation consoles? So for you, it's probably.
Like I said, I'm gonna wait to see what E3 has in store.
Yeah.
And if I can find a good deal, like I might wait. I mean, obviously this game's not coming out right away. It will come out either late this year or early next year.
Yeah.
Is my speculation. I'm gonna see, like you said, what they're gonna show at E3. And I'm going to wait till probably around Thanksgiving to see if I can find a good deal on... I have no real preference of Xbox versus PlayStation 4. Right now, if I had to pick one of the two, I'm leaning more towards the PlayStation, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. But if I can find a really good deal on one or the other, I have no real allegiance to either.
Gotcha. Yeah, I feel the same way, that I want to see what's going on E3. I'm on the opposite boat. I'm kind of leaning towards Xbox One, but that's just because I'm more used to the 360 and that kind of stuff now that I would lean more towards that. But I think that this might be something that would push me into buying it. If Xbox comes out with a great E3 or something, then I'm really going to have to be pushed into it. But I guess we'll see what happens on that. So with the new Fallout and stuff that's coming out, do you think... Have we heard anything about the software used to develop it, or the engine it's going to run on, or anything like that yet?
I want to... I want to say that I've heard that the engine they're using is... I know it's like the second version of the one that was used in Fallout 3. It was like it's Mark II. I can't think of the name of the engine, but I want to say it's Mark II. It's brand new for this game.
Okay. Because it looked good. I mean, obviously we haven't seen any gameplay to see how it flows or loads.
That's a question I have for you then, because I was looking at the trailer, the cinematic, like the dog running through the everything and all this and that. Do you think that was a cinematic for the trailer, or was that in-game footage?
I think that's cinematic.
See, I almost was thinking it looked in-game to me.
I don't, because the way the dog was moving and what the dog was doing, it was purely cinematic. He looks at the bowl, the food bowl, and stuff like that.
And he's playing with the mobile.
Yeah, he's systematically going through things. That doesn't feel like I'm controlling the dog or something. The only thing that I could see is if you're the person walking with this dog through the house, but it didn't feel like that. It felt like you were stationary watching the dog walk through.
Right, I'm just saying, it didn't feel like it was a CG trailer made for that. I mean, yeah, it was. I felt it was in-game assets programmed to do these things, but it felt in-game. It felt like this is what the game is going to look like while you play it. It's going to be maybe plug yourself in as a character watching this dog do that. I could see that being the case. Like it felt finished to me. It felt polished, and it felt this is what this game will look like when we play it.
Well, and it could be a just an in-game. You're not controlling anything, but it's an in-game
right
walkthrough or whatever. Like, you find your house, and that's what you're kind of doing. You're not controlling yourself as you go through it, but it's not exactly a cutscene either.
I just know so many games, especially during E3, and I think last year was one of the worst, or maybe the year before, but all the games shown were... all the trailers that were shown for these games, they just looked like they looked really good, and then all of a sudden the game would come out and they looked half as good as they did in the E3 trailer, and like, oh well, that wasn't in-game footage, that was a cinematic.
Yeah.
And I remember a lot of, like, I think Watch Dogs was really bad about that. I think that was one of the more famous ones. And Witcher 3, I know a lot of people have complained because Witcher 3, it looked really good in the trailers, and all of a sudden the game comes out and it's like half as detailed.
Yeah. And
everyone was like, oh, I feel like I was robbed. So I'm hoping that that's not what this was for Fallout 3 or Fallout 4. It didn't look like that. To me, it looked more like this is what these consoles actually can do.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that's the case. I'm hoping we're not going to get another case of like, oh yeah, this looks really good and here's the game and it's as drab and
it looks exactly like Fallout 3 with slightly better graphics.
Yeah, I'm hoping that that's not what they're actually going to do.
Yeah, and that kind of worries me, and that kind of brings me to the next point is, do you think that this is just going to be the same type of playthrough? Do you think they're going to add anything new, or do you think what could they add to it that's going to be different?
That's what I was thinking, like when I was first watching, the first time I watched the trailer, I watched it a couple times today. The first time I was watching, I'm like, okay, this looks really good. I mean, like we were talking about, it looks vibrant. The graphics look really well made. It looks very polished. But what's different?
What I would like to actually see is, they brought in the partner system and stuff with 3 and New Vegas, and you had partners, you had the dog, you had different stuff like that. I would be interested in being able to, because in those games, they just followed you around, they helped you, you could talk to them, you could basically use them as a backpack if you needed to when you ran out of space, different stuff like that. I would be very interested to be able to play as those characters if you needed to. Like maybe you get to a certain point in their storyline and they, say you got a mutant partner and you get to a vault that's highly irradiated that you can't go into. Then they go, well, I'll take it from here, and then you play as that mutant for a little bit. Oh, that's
interesting. Like, so it's almost like how Grand Theft Auto 5 worked, where you had there was the 3 main characters, and you would kind of rotate between the 3. Well, maybe you're not just one vault hunter, or I can say vault hunter. You're not just one person. Vault boy. Yeah. And you actually do have a small team, and you can pick, okay, well, this character's better suited for this environment. You go and handle this.
Yeah.
And you send them out, and you play as them, and you do it.
Well, and that might work well as, because if you start out in your hometown, someplace that you know about or where it's at, it would be neat to, as you find these people, you can, if you don't want to use that person right now, you can tell them, well, go back to the house, and you'll have a base of operations where as you find these people, you can tell them to go there until you need them. Then you can go grab them, or you can call them on your Pip-Boy or whatever, and say, okay, meet me here, and then that person can help you do whatever.
That's interesting. I didn't even think about that when I was watching it. I like that idea.
Yeah, because, I mean, there'd be, for the dog, there'd be certain places that he can get into that you can't, or certain things that he can find that you can't find.
But you got, like, your plus and minuses, because the dog may be able to get into things that you can't get into, but he's not nearly as armed or
like,
protected.
You come up against something that has guns, you're kind of screwed.
I mean, you've got to... It would be like having completely different play styles within the same game.
Right, just like the mutant would be able to get into highly irradiated places without being damaged, but it's slower, bulkier,
Or if you try to walk through, like, a populated place of just normal people...
People are running away from you.
Or shooting at you.
Yeah.
Like you won't last in this type of place.
Right. Yeah, so I think that would be one way that they could really add to what they've already done. Like, everybody that's played Fallout 3 is familiar with the partner system, familiar with how that can help you through the storyline and stuff like that, but you didn't really get to play as those partners,
right.
And I think that would be really interesting to be able to do.
Something I was talking about with somebody I work with, he saw the trailer too. Do you think there's going to be any multiplayer whatsoever?
I think that they should implement something like that, simply because if you're going to have this great big world, which Fallout is always famous for, why not be able to play with somebody? Even if it's only, I understand you may not be able to do local. That makes sense. It might be too much of a thing. If someone starts running one direction, another person starts running another direction, are you going to crash the system? Yeah. But if you're playing online, you should be able to transport to someone's world or whatever. But the thing is, how would you implement that? How would you explain that, like, well, I'm going to visit this person, but it's the same world that I have? Or do you make multiplayer something completely separate?
Like, the way I was thinking when we were discussing this was how Borderlands did it. Like, it was the same world in Borderlands, and you were just another vault hunter. So this would be you're just another guy from a vault. And I mean, everyone. I mean, you don't even have to wear the vault clothes. So who cares? You wouldn't even necessarily even look like you were from a vault. You're just another character, because there's other characters in the game.
There's tons of NPCs in these games.
So I mean, you could just say, like, oh, you're just another character from this town or whatever, and then let's go explore together. Now that does bring up a good point. Is like, these maps are huge. How far away from your character can you get? Now I know,
if you're operating from your own system, isn't a problem. If you're operating from 2 people on the same system, it becomes a problem.
Local would become a problem in that sense.
Yeah.
Unless they do it kind of like how Borderlands did it, where the zones were smaller, but they were like...
Well, and you couldn't leave without having the other person's permission.
Right.
And,
Well, there was like the loading points. Like, okay, you would do this area, then you wanted to get here, you'd have to both be there to load out to go to the next one. I mean, that would get a little annoying, I think.
Yeah. Well, and then if we're going to do the partners thing where you can play as the partners every once in a while, that would simplify multiplayer too.
Right.
The other person plays as your partner.
Right.
And you can, as you're loading in as the second player, you can decide which character you want to be to help them.
Right. Are they going
or at least one strain of character. I can be a mutant, I can be a dog, I can be, whatever I think is going to help them the best to go and do that.
I really hope they do something like that. I mean, I do like how Fallout... So, like, the way I've always played Fallout is I've always done it alone. I never used any of the partners, or I never took the dog or anything. I always played alone. And that's the way I like to play that game. Now, if I had the option of having a human-controlled partner, I think I would go for that. Like, I typically don't care for NPC.
Right.
Because that's never really implemented the way that I like in games.
Well, what would make that so much more fun is Fallout's infamous for having these huge, you go into a vault and it's like a maze.
Right.
And you're just, constantly going up and down and all around, and you lose where you're at and all this other stuff. Like, that would be great to have a second person to, all right, you go this way, I'll go this way.
Exactly.
If you run into a dead end, come back here.
Exactly.
It would make exploring a lot easier.
And that's what I think they should do for that. I mean, I think this sounds like that would work. Like, that sort of multiplayer partnership.
Right.
Because, I mean, that game would be perfect for it. I mean, Borderlands actually worked really well with having 2 people, because you would explore a dungeon that same way.
Yeah.
So, and I always compare Borderlands and Fallout. They're very, to me, similar in theory.
Yeah, they're very open world, choose your own. It's got a storyline, but you can do whatever you want.
Right. So I don't know. To me, the 2 games were very similar, but not so much in tone, but just in style, they were similar.
Yeah.
So I think that would work. I would love to see that, where you could have 2 people explore a dungeon or a vault or whatever, and it would cut down on how much time is just spent on these side quests and just exploring. Because to me, I love that in Fallout 3, but that's also what made me quit playing, because I didn't have time to do that.
Well, my thing was I would get annoyed with being in these overly large dungeons, because I'd be like, well, have I been here before?
Yeah, have I backtracked?
All right, now I gotta shoot this wall and hope that stays there, so that if I come back by
a mark.
or I'll drop an item right here, so that maybe when I come back, if it's still here, then I know I've already been here.
See, my biggest thing was like, I would be going to do something, and all of a sudden, like, I would see this building that would catch my eye. I'm like, I don't think I've been in there yet.
I gotta go look at it.
I have to go make sure. And then I would go inside, and I'm like, oh, this is an entirely unexplored dungeon or building or whatever. So I would go and, search every nook and cranny in this building.
3 hours later.
Well, then you'd find some kind of a hole that led to a basement dungeon that you didn't even see at first. So you're down in there. Next thing you know, like you said, it is 3 hours later. You're out of time to play. You hadn't even done the thing you were going to go do.
It's like, I got on because I really wanted to get to this place, and I haven't done any of it.
And I have to be at work in 2 hours? I forgot to sleep?
Yeah. What is sleep? We don't need sleep. Sleep for the week.
So, I mean, that was what kind of made me... Because I was still in college at the time, and it started getting to where, do I play Fallout 3 or do I do homework?
Yeah.
And I started needing to do homework, so I was like, I'm going to put Fallout 3 away until I'm done with this class, and then I just never ended up... I couldn't make myself pick it back up, because I was like, I have too much stuff going on all the time now.
Yeah.
I don't have 4 hours that I can just dedicate to this game and get nowhere.
Yeah, to get lost.
Yeah, I don't have 4 hours to sidetrack and not actually progress.
Right. To hope to get some item that by the time you get it, you go, well, that is a leveled down item that I can't even use anymore.
Exactly.
Because I was supposed to do this 20 hours ago that I didn't do. So how big do you think this game is? You look at gameplay hours and stuff like that, with the Xenoblade Chronicles being as big as it is going to be. Is this going to be as big as that? Because they're going to go, well, if they can make a big game, we're just going to blow it out of proportion.
Here's the thing with my opinion on that is... obviously with Xenoblade X, it's going to be on Wii U, so it's not going to be quite as high. The graphics aren't going to be quite as good.
Yeah.
So they're able to make it bigger because the graphics aren't going to be as intense. So they can make the land bigger without having to worry about it crashing anything or being too big.
Without it draining the system.
For anything else. With the other consoles, the next gen things, I don't think they can make them that big. I don't think they can make one huge area, because that would be too straining on everything. They would be just eating away what they could do with the textures. It would be eating away what they could, like the NPCs that could be on the map at the time. So I don't think it's going to be that big.
Well, I mean, when you think about the way Fallout 3 and New Vegas was, it was a really big open world map, but every dungeon, every place that you went into, loaded out differently.
Exactly. Now, if they do it that way, if it's like you find tons of buildings that when you enter them, you load into a new zone, it could be big in that sense. But I don't think there's going to be one huge map that's like... I think it's going to be similar in size to Fallout 3. I would say maybe... I say similar in size. I figure it would be probably like maybe double the size.
Okay.
And then have a lot of like explorable buildings and dungeons and other vaults and stuff like that. I don't think it's going to be I hope it's not going to be like a 90-hour something game. I'm hoping for my sake that it's not, because I don't have the time to handle that.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping it's a little bit more. I know this is gonna be weird to say. I'm hoping it's a little bit more streamlined.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to be able to explore, but I'm sick of playing these games where I start to explore and then lose all my time on something that didn't even really matter.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what
I know
Fallout games are.
I know that's what they are, and I like that. I mean, there are things that you find in Fallout that aren't related to the story by any stretch of the imagination, and those are some of my favorite parts, like the cannibal town in Fallout 3 and stuff like that. I mean, you really don't ever need to go to those places, but you can.
Yeah.
And I do like that there are all of these little... I mean, they're not even really side quests. It's just like these little villages and stuff, because...
Well, and what ends up happening is you get quests when you get there and stuff like that.
Right,
so I guess you would consider it side quests.
But it's not like a side quest to get there, usually.
Right.
Or maybe there are, but you would go out of order to find them, or...
Well, what would happen is that you'd pick up a message or something that talked about a town somewhere, and then on your map, it would put a pinpoint where it thinks it is.
And you'd go and look for that town to see like what's going on here, and then you'd find these different things.
Yeah.
I mean, I like that. I just don't have the time for those to be huge.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say is I want there to be those little things that you can find and explore and whatnot. I just don't want them to be 5 hours worth of content in one building.
Right. Okay. I can understand that.
and I can understand why you would want that if you had the ability, if you had the time to handle that. Like if you maybe were in high school or whatever and didn't have a job and didn't have a family or whatever,
and didn't sleep,
and you don't need to sleep. You have summer break, you have your spring break. You can play these games that are that big, but I don't have the time anymore. So for my sake, I want these to be somewhat more condensed. I want to have the same kind of experiences, but I don't want them to be as big.
Okay, so we talked about the partner system and stuff like that. Is there anything else that you would like to see out of this different from Fallout 3 or New Vegas or anything like that?
Yeah, actually, I would like to see a lot of things different, because that was kind of my fear when I first saw that they were making a Fallout 4, and then when I first saw the trailer. That was kind of one of my fears, is this is just going to be a better looking Fallout 3. And what else can they do with this story? I mean, it's a post-apocalyptic United States. What can they do with it other than what they've already done?
Right.
I don't have an answer to it. I don't know what I would want them to do, but I would love to see something different than Fallout 3. I don't want Fallout 3 HD or whatever you would call it with this game. That's not what I want. I don't know what I do want. I just don't want that.
Right.
I'll take it if that's what they give us, because I mean it looks good, and I mean I know Bethesda makes fun Fallout games. Like I enjoyed Fallout 3 a lot more than I ever thought I would.
Yeah.
And I know they're going to make a great game. I want it to be something new.
You want it to be able to hold your attention.
Well, yeah, I want it to be able to hold my attention, and I want something that they haven't done before. Like I don't want a repackaging of Fallout 3.
Right.
What about you?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I would want something different, like either the partner system or if it doesn't have anything new in terms of the gameplay, the stories. I know you're not a big story guy, but the story's really got to be different. Like if it's a rebuilding type thing like we talked about before, then that's going to hold my attention enough to want to get through the story, to figure out what's going on and how it's going to end up based on my choices and stuff like that. But if it's literally just, hey, you're a vault hunter, you got out, good luck.
Yeah.
Kind of like how everything else has been, then I don't know if it's going to hold my attention through the whole game.
Yeah, I mean, if you really think about it, Fallout 3's story wasn't that... I mean, it wasn't that huge. It was more or less, hey, your dad's gone, go find him.
Yeah, well, I mean...
And there was more to it than that, but like the general... I mean, you could pretty much explain that the story of Fallout 3 is like, yeah, you live in this vault, your dad leaves, you gotta go find him.
Yeah.
And they get the gist of the story.
Yeah. Well, and then, alright, so now that makes me go back to the preview. So, is this a dad looking for his son? There's a baby in the crib.
And, well, no, is there a baby in the crib, or is...
It's the mom and the dad.
In the flashback.
In the flashback.
In the flashbacks. I thought you meant like...
And the dog goes to the crib. Is it the dad looking for the son? Or the child?
And, that'd be... It'd be...
It's a reverse Fallout 3.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't think of that. I did not think of that at all.
The kid somehow escapes, and now the dad's...
Or it could be just the dog recognizes what those look like, and it came from
It forces a flashback of you and your kid, or whatever.
Something like that. I don't know. It could be. I don't know. I did not think about that at all.
Yeah, so... Well, I guess we will have to wait and see what else they release. Do you think there's going to be anything at E3 on this?
Definitely.
Do you think there's going to be more...
I mean, this is going to be the first year that Bethesda is doing a conference of any sort, or presentation of any sort, so I almost think there's going to be gameplay demos.
I would love to see some gameplay in this. I want to see how fluid the gameplay is with however big they make it. Is it glitchy, or is there people running through walls? Is there different stuff like, I don't want that kind of stuff. But
right.
Even though I know it's early on and we're not going to get this for another, God knows how long. But
I would say probably summer next year, I would say.
Yeah.
Summer or fall next year. But one more thing. Do you think... I can't remember exactly what it was called. Was it the VAPS system? The slow-mo?
Oh, yeah, the slow motion thing.
Do you think that's going to be back?
I completely forgot about that. Well, clearly the guy's got a Pip-Boy.
Right.
Clearly he's got all that kind of stuff. I would imagine the injury system's still going to be the same. Where
I hope so.
Cripple your leg, you have to heal it.
I really enjoyed that.
Different stuff like that. Oh, man. Maybe it's a different kind of power that you have. Instead of having VAPs where you can slow stuff down, you're going to have something else. I don't know what that something else could be,
right?
But that would introduce a new type of gameplay.
Right.
Or maybe it's something where you're going to be able to choose what type of thing you can and can't do.
Maybe, there's like a tree of things. Like, you can pick, I want to have the slowdown, so you can slow down time, the bullet time, or whatever. Or maybe I want to have X-ray mode, where I can see enemies through walls.
And there's certain guns that will shoot through walls, too.
Or I can say, instead of fighting this guy, I'm going to sneak around and avoid him. So you
could... Well, okay, so that would work instead of... you could increase your sneak by crawling around people and stuff like that in the last one.
Right.
You could basically use those sneak credits to build towards X-ray vision or something.
Right. So you're like, okay, there's a guy here. If I go around this way, I can avoid him, so I can play the game without fighting anybody.
Right.
And that's kind of what, in a kind of a roundabout way, Deus Ex: Human Revolution did, was you could play that game multiple ways. You could be... I want to upgrade myself to where I'm a good fighter, or I can upgrade myself to where I'm a good hacker, or I can sneak around and not have to engage anybody. So, I mean, that gives you, again, replayability with the game, because you can play it in multiple ways and upgrade yourself in multiple ways, and it's not the same every time you play it.
Yeah, I would definitely like to see that, have... trees are the best way that I can think of it, but basically a different skill set. You can choose what kind of skill set you do, and what would be interesting is if they do it the way that Fallout 3 is, where you start as a kid or whatever, they should make it based on the choices that you make as a kid. Maybe that way it's not completely under your control what special powers you have as you leave the vault,
Mm-hmm.
based on, I mean, given 24 hours after the game's release, somebody's gonna be like, well, if you pick this, and this, you're gonna have the best loadout, or what, you know. But that would allow it to be like, well, if you choose to be this person's friend instead of this person, then you gain this skill, or, you know, different things like that, so that it's not 100% like, well, I want to increase this and do that, and, you know, so it's a little bit harder to choose what you do and don't want to do.
Right, because I remember with Fallout 3, they kind of did that where you took that test and had to pick what skills you wanted, but then right as you were about to leave the vault, they're like,
You
no,
just reset everything.
this is your loadout. Is this what you want? I was
Yeah.
like, oh, well, you could have just done that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of cool how they did it with the test. I wish they would have kind of left it at that.
Yeah, where you can't mess with it.
But it's whatever. I mean, I do like that they give you the final, like, is this what you really want? But it just felt a little weird.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will definitely see what happens with E3 and what Bethesda has to offer. We actually have questions for you guys. We'd like you guys to get your input on this. What do you guys think or would like to see out of Fallout 4? Is there a certain class system you'd like to see, or something different that they would or wouldn't do? Or are you just looking for a different Fallout that plays by the same rules as 3 and New Vegas? So that you can keep doing what you've always been doing.
Yeah, so let us know. Leave a comment down below on YouTube, and we'll address it in a later podcast. Thanks again for listening. You catch us at Idiots at Play on YouTube and IdiotSpeak Show on SoundCloud. And we are on iTunes now, so be sure to check that out. IdiotSpeak Show. And we'll see you all next time.
Bye!
Welcome, everybody, to the IdiotSpeak podcast number 4.
Woo!
James, what are we going to talk about today?
We're going to talk about E3, specifically Nintendo's E3, and what we think is going to happen.